An EHR sidecar is an application that runs alongside your EHR, and it complements or adds new workflows to what your EHR already does. Now, the reason why most people use a sidecar application is because your main EHR doesn't really do what you want it to do. And you're using the sidecar as a way to enhance the functionality of your EHR without like ripping it out completely and like replacing it with something else. Usually, sidecars are in the same context of what the EHR is doing. So, for example, if you are viewing a patient in the main EHR, then usually the sidecar also has this patient. And there is a rich history to this. And in this video, we'll explore how the sidecar application came to be and what is the future of sidecar applications. So now, before we fully understand sidecar applications, we need to go into a little bit of the history of how we got here. So in the early 90s, when EHRs were just getting introduced, and even in the late 2000s, you had multiple different systems that were doing one particular thing really well, and it was common for each department in a hospital to have their own EHR system. And this is back in the days, like they even had terminal access to the clinical records. So each of them even had their own terminals. And there are pictures of some departments having multiple different physical terminals because each of these terminals were connected to different EHRs and different systems. So then you had standards bodies like HL7 come out, and they introduced new standards where the software and the EHRs can start communicating with each other. So you had HL7v2, and then you had these ADT messages, the OBX, the ORUs, and you had some data flowing between these different systems. So in a typical sense, you would have a hospital department. You could have multiple terminals, but at least the data that you're entering inside one terminal or one system is somehow being synchronized with another. Now, depending on which department you are in, there usually was one main EHR, and then there are other sidecar, applications or EHRs. So, for example, let's say if you are in the emergency medicine department, you might have an emergency medicine EHR that you're using 80% of the time, but then you're also switching between the labs application. You're also switching and seeing who the medicine consult for today is and when they are going to come. So there are always going to be these other workflows that your main EHR does not do, and then you always switch to another terminal to do it. And this is as old as like the 1990s when EHRs were even like becoming a thing. So around the same time, we had this standard by HL7 called CCOW. It was the Clinical Context Object Work Group. And then they decided how these different applications can sort of work together to give the practitioner a little bit more seamless experience. So what they did was, there is, if let's say one EHR opens up a particular patient, it was able to send that information about the context, which is again like this patient is open. It was able to send that out to other applications that are interested. And all of these other applications will then open up the same patient and have the same context. You can see how this is pretty useful because you just open it up in one computer and you immediately see the same patient in all of these different systems. And again, we are talking about in the olden times, there could have been multiple physical systems, all of which open up the same patient. But it was kind of nice to just open it up once and then have it synchronize across all of these different systems. An example could be a practitioner could open up a patient in one, maybe their primary EHR, and then you might have a radiology system, a radiology information system, and you might have another prescribing application running alongside, and they would open up the patient immediately too. So the practitioner is done with the main EHR, he quickly sees the radiology findings, he prescribes some medications, and you're done with the workflow. Now, in 2009, we have the HITECH Act by the US, and this is probably the most significant EHR implementation act probably in the whole world. But what they basically said was, okay, we are going to have this thing called meaningful use. And if you're able to adopt an EHR that qualifies with this criteria, then as the government, we will pay you a lot of money. And this was this was during times of financial crisis, and like there was already this housing bubble going on, and this is right after post recovery, and the government has a lot of money for stimulus, so they decide, okay, let's stimulate the economy, but then let's do it through healthcare this time. So they do that. And what happens is that, again, this is the same time in which players like Epic, Cerner, all of them are getting started. I think they're all in Madison, Wisconsin, just like setting up. Judy is like still out of, the graduate years and like getting the Epic set up. So you have the market flood with EHRs, right? This is a specifically US phenomenon, but then throughout the world, you have something equivalent happening. You have people who mandate EHRs for getting paid by insurance. So there is a lot of this sort of mandated EHR use going on throughout the world. Now, what does this do? So this floods the hospitals with all of these EHR products that are meant to be used by the practitioner to even get paid. So first is like the meaningful use, getting paid directly just because you're using or you're spending some time on the EHR. But then later on, it just becomes a billing solution. Like you need to use the EHR in order to get paid by insurance. So in essence, the EHR of the 1990s, which were mostly for the quality of care and to make sure that you're transmitting information about the patient, this now changes more into a revenue cycle management system. So the EHR is there so that you're able to use it and you're able to show that, okay, you've done these things, and then you're able to send your billing codes to your insurer who will then like pay you. So this again has a good impact on the kind of people who are entering healthcare. So there is this really nice graph I like to show. After the HITECH Act, you have more people who are in health IT in healthcare than doctors and nurses combined. So that it's just like funny to think about that a single act like this could have such a dramatic impact, but that's what happened. So now you have an EHR. Almost all hospitals and all healthcare systems have an EHR, right? And they are using it, but then it's not meeting the needs of the practitioner. So you have you have this thing which you need to use because the government says so, and you also need to get paid. So you need to use this, but most people want different workflows. They want better user experiences. They want something that works for them. They can quickly see their patients, and they're just burdened with this existing EHR where they just have to go through the whole exact thing, like, and they see the same problem list 40 times. Like, so all of this is because you need to use it in a certain way for you to even get paid. But then it's not really helping with the actual inference or the care of the patient. The practitioner has to look through so many different things before they actually make sense of the data. So we have sidecar applications to the rescue again. So we have all of these different apps that needed to be built in order to actually facilitate care. But the EHRs were sort of rigid and they were not allowing other people to build on top of it. So Epic notoriously like completely closed down to any app developers, and you are not able to like build on top of Epic at all. And Cerner was pretty similar. And then the government says, okay, you know what? You can't do this. That's information blocking, right? And this is where FHIR starts taking over, right? Like, so the Information Blocking Act and the 21st Century Cures Act specifically says that an EHR cannot block information, and you need to allow people to access the information in your EHR through standardized APIs. One of these APIs being FHIR. Now comes the introduction of Smart on FHIR and FHIR-based applications that you can build on top of EHRs. So we've seen that the EHR has essentially become a billing system, and people are using it just so that they can get paid. So now the government has opened up a bunch of APIs that anyone can access, including the patient. In fact, that was the first to go out. But then they also mandate that any certified health IT product, which is again like regulated, needs to open up the FHIR APIs that are then accessible by other practitioner applications as well. So you have these hundreds of apps, like I think it's close to 1,000 now, that just were built on top of these FHIR APIs. So if you go to the Smart on FHIR app gallery today, or even the Epic App Store, you will see thousands of these apps that are built, that are fit for purpose for a particular workflow. And guess what? They behave as sidecar applications as well. So what happens is you can launch this in one of two ways. So you can either open up the patient context within your EHR like Epic, and then you can launch this within the EHR. So this is again an iframe view, or it's an embedded EHR mode where you're able to open up the sidecar within your EHR and it loads up the data about that patient. Or you have this running completely separately and the practitioner is switching to a new tab and then they are checking this out. So when they do that, you still need to access the APIs of the EHR and connect strongly, and then you need to make sure you are staying in sync with the EHR. And not only that, there is also a new specification now for context sharing. So there used to be CCOW, and it was allowing people to, like when they open up one particular patient, it opens up the same patient in these different apps and different screens. Now the upgraded version of that is FHIRcast. And again, it is used, it's not fully mandated yet, but it's being adopted. It's already implemented by major EHRs, and it allows you to get notified whenever a practitioner opens up that particular patient, right? And then you are able to see that, oh, okay, now I need to show that in my application too. But in the background, you are maybe using FHIR, maybe CCDA, maybe HL7v2 to actually synchronize from the EHR to your application if you are running standalone. There is a middle ground here as well, and that was introduced by CDS hooks. This is yet another specification where when you open up the patient in the EHR, you have the ability to show a card, like a clinical decision support card, where you can prompt them and tell them, hey, this patient it looks weird, or like it has something. You may want to check this in the app, right? And then they click on that, and then it takes them to your Sidecar app, and then you're able to review the patient a little bit more in detail. Now, CDS hooks also allows you to auto-launch your app when certain conditions are met. So it's the Wild West right now when it comes to sidecar applications. But the core idea being, sidecars have always been a thing. They have always existed, and there has always been one main EHR and people using these other applications around the EHR. Now, with the information blocking, regulation, we are seeing a lot more people build these sort of sidecar applications, but then they are not really able to understand the techniques to use in order to synchronize data from the EHR to the sidecar and how exactly to launch the sidecar in context. So there's a lot of questions. So we built a completely free course on FHIR. It's on our website, and we go through some of these and we cover how exactly you can interact with a FHIR API, how exactly to get all of this data. So if you're interested, I will leave a link down below. I'll maybe also put it on the screen here, but it's completely free and you can sign up and you will get access to the whole thing. So I hope this video was useful, and I'll see you in the next one.